The night was cold and quiet. The moonlight spread across the small village, painting the roofs silver. A man named Daniel walked down the narrow road, calling again and again, "Max! Where are you, boy, Max?" Max was his loyal dog, his only true friend after his parents passed away. The dog never left his side, never disappeared without reason. But tonight was different. The leash had slipped from Daniel's hand during their evening walk, and Max had run into the dark forest. Daniel had been searching for hours, his voice breaking the silence of the night. The trees stood tall and black like silent guards. Every time Daniel shouted, the echo came back, but no barking voice answered him. His heart beat faster. Something felt strange in the air. The forest was never this quiet. Not a single owl, not a single insect, only the sound of his own boots pressing against fallen leaves. He stopped to catch his breath. In his hand, he held a flashlight. Its weak beam cut through the mist. Suddenly, he noticed something unusual on the ground. A circle of grass looked burned, blackened as if fire had touched it. The edges glowed faintly as though heat still lingered. Daniel bent down, touched it carefully, and pulled his hand away. It was warm. His stomach tightened. Fire in the middle of the forest? No smoke, no ashes, just a perfect round mark. He whispered to himself, What happened here?" Before he could think more, a sound came from the distance. Not the bark of his dog, but a low hum like metal singing in the air. He lifted his head, listening hard. The hum grew louder, then faded, then returned again as if circling above the trees. Daniel's skin prickled. "Max!" he called louder, trying to sound brave, but his voice trembled. The flashlight beam shook in his hand. Then he spotted something lying in the grass. He rushed forward. His heart jumped, and it was Max's collar. The little bell attached to it was cracked. Daniel picked it up and held it tightly, his throat dry. "Where are you, boy?" he whispered. A sudden rustle came from the left. Leaves moved though no wind blew. Daniel turned quickly, shining the flashlight toward the sound. For a second he saw something small, a shadow running between the trees. It was too quick to recognize. Not a man. Not an animal he knew. The figure was slim, short, and almost glowing. Then it vanished into the darkness. Daniel froze. His heart hammered in his chest. "Who's there?" he shouted. His voice broke, no reply. Only silence. He forced himself to move forward. Each step felt heavy. The deeper he went into the forest, the stranger it felt. The ground had more of those burned circles, spread like footprints of something not human. He counted them as he walked, and 1, 2, 3, 5. Each one glowing faintly as if lit from underground. Suddenly, the flashlight flickered and died. Darkness swallowed him whole. Daniel shook it hard, trying to bring the light back. Nothing. His breathing grew louder, echoing in his own ears. Then, out of nowhere, a soft whisper reached him. Not English, not any language he knew. The words were light, almost musical, like a song, but it was close. Very close. Daniel spun around, eyes wide, but he saw nothing. Only darkness. He swallowed hard and gripped Max's broken collar in his fist like a weapon. The whisper came again, this time from his right, then from his left, as if 2 or 3 voices were circling him. He felt dizzy. Were they children? Spirits? His mind screamed at him to run, but his legs would not move. Then came another sound. Soft laughter. High-pitched, innocent, like the giggle of little girls. The hair on Daniel's neck rose. "Who's there? Show yourself!" he shouted into the night. His voice cracked with fear. No answer, only the faint laughter fading into the distance. He finally forced himself to walk back toward the village. His steps were faster now, almost a run. The collar rattled in his hand with every movement. He felt watched. Eyes followed him from the darkness, unseen but sharp. At the edge of the forest, he stopped once more and looked back. For a brief second, just before the mist covered everything, he saw 2 tiny figures standing between the trees. They were small, maybe the size of children. Their eyes glowed faintly in the moonlight. They were holding something. Or someone. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. Was that Max? He blinked and the figures were gone. Only the silent forest remained. He stumbled back to his house, confused and terrified. He shut the door quickly, locking it twice. Sitting by the window, he clutched Max's collar in his hands. Sleep did not come that night. His mind kept repeating the same question. If Max is alive, then who were those children? And why were they in the forest? The first rays of dawn touched the horizon. Daniel's eyes were red, his hands shaking. He promised himself one thing. Tomorrow he would go back to the forest. He had to find out the truth, but deep inside he knew. Whatever he saw last night was not human. The sun rose slowly, painting the sky orange and gold. Daniel had not slept all night. He sat by the window, Max's broken collar still in his hand. His eyes burned with exhaustion, but his mind was sharp. He could not forget the glowing figures in the forest. Were they children? Spirits? Something worse. As the village woke, Daniel decided. He could not wait. He had to go back. He had to find Max. He grabbed his backpack, slipped the collar inside, and carried a small knife for safety. His footsteps echoed on the empty street as he made his way to the forest. The morning was calm, but the memory of last night's whispers clung to him. Inside the forest, the air felt cooler, heavier. The burned circles were still there, darker now in the daylight. Birds sang again as if nothing had happened, but Daniel knew the truth. Something strange lived here. He walked deeper until he reached the place where he had seen the glowing eyes. His heart raced. He held his breath, listening, then he heard it. A bark. Max, he shouted, his voice shaking with hope. The bark came again, louder this time. Daniel ran, pushing branches aside, tripping over roots. His chest tightened as he broke into a small clearing, and there he saw it. Max, his dog, safe and alive. Daniel's heart leapt with joy. Max! He cried, rushing forward. The dog wagged its tail, barking happily, but then Daniel froze. Max was not alone. Two small figures were kneeling beside the dog. They looked like little girls no older than 8 or 9, but they were not human. Their skin shimmered faintly, glowing in soft colors that changed like water, sometimes pale blue, sometimes silver. Their hair floated as if touched by a wind that Daniel could not feel. And their eyes. Their eyes were large, round, and bright like stars trapped inside glass. The girls laughed softly as Max rolled on the ground, licking their glowing hands. They touched him gently, speaking in their strange musical language. Daniel's mouth went dry. He wanted to shout, to grab his dog, but his body would not move. The scene was so unreal, so impossible. One of the girls looked up. Her glowing eyes locked with his. She tilted her head, curious, not afraid. The other girl followed, and both stood slowly. Daniel stepped back, his hand gripping the knife in his pocket. His heart thudded like a drum. Stay away, he whispered, though his voice was weak. The taller girl raised her hand, palm open. Her voice was soft, broken, but in English. Friend, she said. Daniel froze. He blinked, wondering if he had imagined it. But then she spoke again. Friend. No hurt, his breath caught. They could speak. At least a little. Max barked once and ran to Daniel, tail wagging. The dog pressed against his legs as if saying, They are safe. Daniel knelt, hugging Max tightly. His eyes stayed on the girls. Who are you? He asked, his voice trembling. The girls looked at each other, whispering in their own language. Then one stepped forward. She touched her chest. Lost, she said. The word was heavy, sad. Her glowing eyes dimmed for a second. Daniel's skin prickled. Lost? Lost from where? From another world? Before he could ask more, the ground beneath them trembled. Leaves fell from the trees as a deep rumble echoed in the distance. The girls stiffened, fear flashing across their faces. They looked toward the far side of the forest, eyes wide, glowing brighter. Max growled softly. What is it? Daniel asked, panic rising in his chest. The girls shook their heads, speaking quickly in their strange tongue. Their voices trembled. Whatever it was, they were afraid of it. The rumble grew louder, now mixed with a mechanical hum. Daniel recognized it. The same sound he had heard last night, the sound of metal in the air. The taller girl grabbed the other's hand. She looked at Daniel, her voice urgent. Hide, she said. Daniel swallowed hard. His instincts screamed to run, but his legs stayed frozen. He glanced at Max, then back at the glowing children. They weren't dangerous. They were just scared. Who is coming? He asked, though he already felt the answer would be worse than he imagined. The girl's eyes glistened. She whispered one word. Hunters. Daniel's blood turned cold. He looked around wildly. The hum grew louder, closer. Birds flew from the trees in terror. The ground shook again, heavier this time, as if giants were walking toward them. The girls pulled at his sleeve, urging him to move. Daniel's mind raced. Should he trust them? They weren't human, but they had saved Max. They were afraid of the hunters, and their fear felt real. The hum became a roar, and beams of strange light cut through the trees in the distance. Shadows moved. Tall, armored, inhuman. Daniel grabbed Max's collar with one hand and the girl's glowing hands with the other. His voice was low but fierce. "Run!" The four of them darted into the forest, leaves and branches whipping their faces. Behind them, the heavy footsteps followed, and the hunter's machines growled like thunder. For the first time in his life, Daniel realized this was no longer just about finding his dog. He had stepped into something far greater, something dangerous, and there was no turning back. The forest swallowed them as they ran. Daniel's breath came fast, his legs burned, but he didn't stop. Max barked beside him, leaping over roots and stones. The two glowing girls ran lightly, almost floating, their feet hardly touching the ground. Behind them, the sound of machines and heavy boots grew closer, shaking the earth like thunder. "Faster!" Daniel gasped, pulling the girls by their hands. They reached an old abandoned shed deep in the woods. Daniel had seen it before, a broken wooden hut used long ago by hunters. He pushed the door open and rushed inside. The girls and Max followed. He shut the door quickly, leaning against it, heart pounding. Inside, dust floated in the air. Broken tools lay scattered on the floor. The walls creaked in the wind, but it was still safer than the open forest. Daniel pressed a finger to his lips, signaling silence. The girls nodded. Outside, the forest roared with strange sounds. A metallic growl, a hiss. Then the heavy steps came closer. Daniel peeked through a crack in the wooden wall. His stomach twisted. 5 tall figures moved through the trees. They were not men. They were armored, their bodies covered in black metal suits that glowed with red lines. Their helmets had no faces, only a single red eye in the center. Each carried a long weapon that hummed with energy. The hunters. Daniel held his breath. They moved slowly, scanning the ground with strange devices. One of them pointed to the burned circles. Another bent low, touching the soil, then growled something in a harsh, guttural language. Max growled softly, but Daniel quickly placed a hand on the dog's head, calming him. "Quiet, boy," he whispered. The 2 alien girls huddled close together, fear shining in their glowing eyes. Daniel looked at them. He could not hold it anymore. "Who are they?" he asked in a low voice. "Why are they after you?" The taller girl looked at him, lips trembling. For a moment she said nothing. Then she whispered a single word. "Prison." Daniel frowned. "Prison? You escaped from them?" She nodded. Her hand touched her chest. "We belong there, to them." She shook her head quickly, tears forming. "But we run." Daniel's throat went dry. He understood. These girls had been captured. Maybe used for experiments, maybe worse. They had escaped, and now the hunters were here to take them back. The younger girl tugged at Daniel's sleeve. She whispered in a trembling voice. "They call us tests." Daniel felt anger rise inside him. He looked again at the hunters outside. The way they scanned the ground, the way they hunted with no mercy. It was not a search for children. It was a search for property, for stolen things, but these weren't things. They were alive. They laughed. They played with Max. They were children. The shed suddenly shook as one of the hunters walked past, its heavy boots cracking the ground. Daniel pressed himself against the wall, silent. The girls clung to him, shivering. One of them whispered, "They feel us." "They smell us," Daniel's mind raced. If they had technology to track heat, sound, or even energy, then hiding would not work for long. He looked around the shed desperately. Old wooden shelves, rusted nails, broken nets. Nothing useful. Then his eyes fell on the ground. A hole, small, hidden under a broken plank. An old escape tunnel once used by hunters to store traps. Daniel's heart leapt. He pulled the plank aside quietly. Beneath was a narrow tunnel leading into the earth, dark and cold. He turned to the girls. "We go down," he whispered. The older girl shook her head, frightened. "Dark," Daniel nodded firmly. "Yes, dark, but safe. If we stay, they find us." She hesitated, then nodded slowly. One by one, Daniel helped them into the tunnel. Max went first, sniffing the air. The girls followed, glowing faintly like lanterns in the darkness. Daniel climbed in last, pulling the plank back over his head. Inside, the tunnel was tight and damp. The air smelled of soil and stone. They crawled forward on hands and knees, their breaths loud in the silence. Above, the sound of hunters moving grew faint but still there. After a long crawl, they reached a wider space, almost like a cave. Daniel sat back, exhausted. His clothes were covered in dirt. The girls sat across from him, their glowing faces dim with sadness. He spoke softly. "Why come here? Why Earth?" The older girl lowered her eyes. She touched Max gently as he lay beside her. Her voice cracked. "Safe, Earth. Safe, humans. Strong." Daniel blinked. Her words echoed in his mind. Safe, human, strong? He had never thought of himself that way. He was just an ordinary man in a small village. But to them, he was something different. The younger girl whispered, "They fear humans." Daniel frowned. "Who, the hunters?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, they fear, but they want control." The air in the cave grew heavy. Daniel rubbed his forehead, trying to understand. These children had come to Earth for safety, but instead they had brought danger. Now the hunters were here, and he was caught in the middle. But one thing was clear. He could not hand them over. The ground above suddenly shook again. A loud voice thundered in the hunter's language. The girls covered their ears, trembling. Daniel clenched his fists. He whispered to himself, "If they want you, they'll have to go through me." Max lifted his head, ears sharp, ready to protect. The hunters were closing in, and Daniel knew the real fight was just beginning. The cave was silent, but above them the forest shook with heavy steps. Daniel sat against the wall, his heart pounding like a drum. Max lay close by, growling softly, his ears twitching with every sound. The two alien girls clung to each other, their glowing eyes wide with fear. The noise outside grew louder, metal scraping, trees cracking. The hunters were spreading out. Daniel whispered, "They're searching. We can't stay here long." The older girl shook her head quickly. "No, if we move, they see." She was right. The hunters carried strange devices, machines that hummed and flashed. Daniel had seen the red beams scanning the ground. If they moved carelessly, those beams would catch them. But waiting felt like death. Max gave a sharp bark. Daniel turned quickly. A faint light was shining through a crack in the cave wall. Someone was outside. Slowly, Daniel crept closer and peeked. A hunter stood only a few steps away. Its tall black body gleamed in the morning light. The red eye in its helmet pulsed as it scanned the ground. In its hand was a weapon, long and sharp, glowing with blue energy. Daniel froze. His breath caught in his chest. The hunter tilted its head, the red eye sweeping across the forest floor. It paused, then bent down, running its metal fingers through the dirt. The device on its arm beeped loudly. The hunter growled something in its alien tongue. Instantly, 3 more hunters appeared, marching like shadows. The girls gasped. The younger one whispered, "They feel us." Daniel's mind raced. If the hunters found the tunnel entrance, they were finished. He pressed his fist against the dirt, forcing himself to think. Suddenly, one of the hunters raised its weapon and fired into the trees. A flash of blue light cut the air, splitting a trunk in half. Smoke and fire spread quickly, the forest filled with the crack of burning wood. It was a warning. They weren't just searching. They were forcing them out. The girls held their glowing hands over their ears, shaking with fear. Max barked wildly, his body tense. Daniel grabbed his collar. "Quiet, boy. Not now." But it was too late. The hunter's red eye turned sharply toward the cave wall. It had heard. Daniel's stomach dropped. "Run," he whispered, though there was nowhere to run. The wall cracked open with a blast of blue fire. Rocks and dirt flew into the cave. Daniel threw himself over the girls, shielding them. Max barked furiously, his teeth bared. Through the smoke, the hunters stepped inside. Daniel's heart pounded so hard he could barely breathe. He pulled the knife from his pocket, though it looked pitiful against their glowing weapons. The lead hunter's red eye focused on the girls. It raised its arm, pointing. A harsh voice boomed in their strange language. The older girl shook her head and screamed, "No! No back! No prison!" Daniel's chest burned with anger. He stood tall, knife in hand. "You're not taking them," he shouted. The hunter tilted its head, almost amused. Its voice rumbled low like laughter. Then it stepped forward. Daniel's hand trembled. He was only a man holding a small blade, but he could not step aside. He had promised himself. He had promised Max. Suddenly, the younger girl grabbed Daniel's arm. Her glowing hands burned hot, and a strange energy shot through his body. His skin prickled, his mind sparked with light. For a moment, everything slowed. The hunter lunged forward. Daniel moved without thinking. He ducked, swung his knife upward, and sparks flew as it scraped against the hunter's armor. The machine roared, stumbling back. Daniel gasped. He should not have been strong enough. But the girl's touch had changed him, again. The older girl shouted, her voice fierce. Daniel grabbed a broken wooden pole from the cave floor. The girls placed their glowing hands on it, and suddenly it shimmered with strange light, humming with power. The hunters growled, stepping closer. Daniel swung the pole like a spear. The light from the girls exploded, striking one hunter's chest. The metal cracked, and the creature fell with a heavy thud. Max leapt onto another, biting at its joints. The machine stumbled, swatting at him. The cave was chaos, fire, smoke, sparks, and shouts. Daniel fought with desperation, the girls fueling him with strange energy. He ducked, rolled, struck again, but the hunters were strong. Too strong. The leader raised its weapon, charging it with deadly blue light. Daniel's eyes widened. He knew this blast would kill them all. The older girl screamed. She stepped in front of Daniel, raising both hands. Her body glowed brighter, brighter, until the cave was filled with blinding white light. The blast fired. It hit her glowing shield, shattering the rocks around them. Dust rained down, the cave shook. When the smoke cleared, the leader hunter stood frozen. Its weapon cracked, sparking. The girl fell to her knees, trembling, her glow dimmed. Daniel rushed to her side. "Are you okay?" he cried. She nodded weakly, her voice barely a whisper. "Not forever. Can't hold long." The leader growled, furious. It lifted its broken weapon and pointed again. Daniel's chest burned. He tightened his grip on the glowing pole. He knew he had only one choice. "Go!" he shouted at the girls. "Run with Max. I'll hold them." But the girls shook their heads. Their glowing eyes shone with stubborn fire. "No," the younger one said firmly. "We fight?" Together. Daniel stared at them. For a second, fear and pride mixed in his heart. The hunters stepped closer, surrounding them. The cave walls shook with their heavy steps. Daniel raised the glowing pole. Max barked fiercely, and the two alien girls stood beside him, their small hands blazing with strange power. The hunters had found them. The battle was only beginning. Dust filled the air. The cave walls groaned, stones falling from the ceiling. Daniel coughed, holding the glowing pole, his eyes burning from smoke. The hunters closed in, their red eyes glowing like fire in the dark. "Now!" Daniel shouted. The older girl grabbed his arm, her small hands glowing again. Power surged through him, hot and sharp, filling his muscles with strength. He swung the pole in a wide arc. Light exploded. One hunter flew backward, slamming into the wall with a crash. "Go!" he yelled. Max barked fiercely and darted toward the tunnel opening. The younger girl followed, pulling Daniel's sleeve. The older girl stumbled, her glow weak, but Daniel caught her and pushed her forward. They crawled into the narrow passage. Behind them, the hunters roared. A blast of blue light struck the wall, shaking the tunnel. Rocks rained down, blocking part of the path. "Faster!" Daniel urged. His knees scraped against stone, but he didn't stop. He could hear the hunters smashing their way inside, their heavy steps growing closer. The tunnel twisted, then opened into a larger chamber. Faint shafts of sunlight poured through cracks in the roof. The air was cold and wet. Strange moss glowed on the walls, casting a pale green light. The girls stood close, whispering in their strange language. Daniel pressed his back to the wall, listening. The hunters were still coming. "There's another way out," the older girl said weakly. Her English was broken, but clear enough. She pointed toward a dark passage on the left. Daniel nodded. "Let's move." They ran, Max leading the way. The tunnel sloped upward. The air grew fresher, but behind them the hunters were faster. Their red eyes lit the passage, their mechanical voices echoing like demons in the stone. One hunter raised its weapon. The blue light hummed, charging. Daniel spun, pushing the younger girl behind him. "Down!" he shouted. The blast fired. It struck the wall, exploding in a shower of rock. Daniel fell hard, his ears ringing. The younger girl screamed. Max barked wildly, leaping at the hunter's legs. The older girl placed her glowing hands on the wall. The stone shivered, cracked, and collapsed, sealing part of the tunnel with a loud crash. Dust rose, blocking the hunter's path. She swayed, nearly fainting. Daniel caught her. "You're burning yourself out," he whispered. She shook her head. "No choice. They stumbled onward. Finally, light appeared ahead, a small opening at the end of the tunnel. Daniel pushed the girls toward it. Max squeezed through first, barking at the open air. Daniel shoved the girls through, then crawled out himself. They tumbled into the forest. Bright sunlight hit his eyes. The fresh air felt like freedom, but the sound behind them crushed that hope. The hunters were already breaking through the rock. "Run!" Daniel shouted. They dashed through the trees. Branches whipped against their faces. The ground was uneven, roots clawing at their feet. Daniel's lungs burned, but he kept going. Max darted ahead, then circled back, guiding them like a scout. Behind them, the hunters spread out, moving in perfect formation. Their red eyes glowed through the forest mist. Their weapons cut through trees, sending fire and smoke into the air. The girls ran lightly, almost floating. But Daniel was slowing. His legs shook. He stumbled once, almost falling. The younger girl grabbed his hand. "Strong," she said firmly. Her touch glowed, and for a moment his body felt lighter. Daniel forced himself forward. They reached a deep ravine where water rushed below. A broken wooden bridge stretched across, old and weak. Daniel stopped. "We can't cross that. It'll collapse." The hunters' heavy steps shook the ground behind them. The older girl looked at the bridge, then at Daniel. Her voice was steady. "Trust." Daniel swallowed hard. He had no choice. Max bounded across first, his paws tapping the rotten wood. The bridge swayed but held. The younger girl followed, her glowing feet almost weightless. Daniel held the older girl's hand as they stepped onto the bridge. The wood cracked under his weight. His heart pounded. Halfway across, the hunters appeared at the edge of the ravine. One raised its weapon. "No!" Daniel shouted, pulling the girls forward. The blast struck the bridge. Wood shattered. The bridge shook violently, splitting apart. Daniel grabbed the rope with one hand, holding the older girl with the other. Max barked frantically from the far side. The younger girl clung to the rocks, glowing hands pressed against the cliff. "Climb!" Daniel shouted. His muscles screamed, but he pulled himself upward. The rope burned his palms. The hunters fired again, but the blast hit the water below, exploding into steam. Finally, Daniel dragged himself over the edge, pulling the girls with him. They collapsed on the ground, gasping. Max licked his face, barking with joy. The bridge behind them fell completely, crashing into the water. The hunters stood on the other side, their red eyes burning with rage. For now, they could not cross. Daniel lay on his back, staring at the sky, his chest rising and falling. He turned to the girls. "Why me? Why come to me?" The older girl met his eyes. Her glow was dim but steady. "Because humans fight. Humans do not stop." The younger one added softly, "We need you." Daniel felt a chill run through him. He was just a man, ordinary, nothing special. But to them he was different. He was hope. The hunters roared from across the ravine, their voices shaking the trees. Daniel closed his eyes, clutching Max's fur. He had escaped once. But he knew this was only the beginning. The hunters would not stop, and neither would he. The ravine lay behind them, the broken bridge drifting in the rushing water below. Daniel sat on the ground, sweat running down his face. His chest heaved with every breath. Max paced beside him, growling at the hunters who still stood on the other side. The two alien girls sat close, their glowing eyes dim from exhaustion. The older one leaned weakly against a tree, whispering in her strange tongue. The younger girl looked at Daniel and said softly, "They come again? Hunters. Never stop." Daniel wiped the sweat from his brow. Then neither do we. He looked around. The forest here was thicker, filled with vines, stones, and tall old trees. He knew these woods well. He had grown up hunting rabbits and fishing in the rivers. The hunters had their machines, their weapons, their glowing armor. But Daniel had something else. He had the forest. "Stay here," he told the girls firmly. "Don't move until I say." The older girl shook her head, frightened. "No, you fight, you die." Daniel gave a hard smile. "Not if I fight my way," he whistled softly. Max's ears perked up. The dog wagged his tail once, ready to follow. Daniel moved quickly, his mind racing. He remembered every hunting trip, every trap his father had taught him long ago. He grabbed fallen branches, cut vines with his knife, and tied knots with quick hands. He set traps in the undergrowth, snares hidden under leaves, sharpened stakes camouflaged with moss, heavy logs balanced by rope. Max helped, pulling branches into place, dragging sticks. Daniel worked fast, the rhythm of survival driving his hands. The girls watched silently, their glowing eyes wide with confusion. To them, it looked like madness. A man building broken sticks and ropes against armored giants. But Daniel's face was calm, focused. He knew what he was doing. When he finished, he crouched low and waited. The hunters' voices carried across the ravine, harsh and metallic. Then came the sound of machines. A long cable fired from their side, hooking into the rocks. The hunters began crossing with ease, climbing hand over hand, their heavy armor gleaming. Daniel whispered, "Now we see." The first hunter stepped into the forest. Its red eye scanned the trees. A sharp snap echoed as it triggered one of Daniel's snares. The ground gave way beneath it, and the creature crashed into a pit lined with sharpened stakes. Sparks flew as its armor cracked. The machine roared, thrashing in rage. The girls gasped. Daniel's eyes hardened. "That's one." The second hunter moved forward, cautious. But Daniel had planned for that. A heavy log swung down from the trees, striking its chest with crushing force. The hunter slammed into the ground, stunned. Max leapt onto it, biting and snarling. Daniel ran, grabbed a sharp stone and smashed it against the creature's helmet. Sparks burst. The red eye flickered, then went dark. The forest came alive with traps. Ropes snapped, rocks fell, branches lashed out. The hunters growled, firing their weapons wildly. Blue blasts burned trees, setting small fires. But Daniel's traps kept striking, breaking their rhythm. The younger girl whispered in awe, He fights with forest." The older girl nodded slowly. "This is human strength." Daniel grabbed another branch sharpened into a spear. He waited as one hunter advanced, scanning the ground carefully. But Daniel was faster. He threw the spear with all his strength. It struck between the plates of its armor. The machine roared, sparks shooting from its chest, then collapsed in smoke. Max barked fiercely, chasing another back into the shadows. For the first time, the hunters hesitated. They were stronger, taller, armed with powerful weapons. But they were not clever in this wild place. They did not know the trees, the roots, the hidden dangers of Earth. Daniel stood tall, breathing hard, his hands bloody and raw. He shouted into the forest, his voice echoing, "You think we're weak? You think we're prey? This is our world. And here, humans fight back." The girls' glowing eyes brightened, pride shining in their faces. They whispered together, their voices trembling, "Yes, humans are different." But the battle was not over. The leader hunter stepped forward, taller than the rest. Its armor glowed brighter, red lines blazing across its body. Its weapon hummed with deadly power. Daniel's chest tightened. His traps had slowed the others, but this one was stronger, smarter. It studied him carefully, almost as if it respected him. The leader spoke in its harsh tongue. The girls stiffened. The older one translated in a whisper. He says, "Human not normal. Human dangerous." Daniel gripped the glowing pole the girls had powered earlier. He raised it like a spear, his body trembling but unbroken. Max growled beside him, teeth bared. The forest was silent, waiting. The leader hunter raised its weapon. Daniel raised his pole. Two worlds, two powers ready to collide. The forest was quiet, almost too quiet. Smoke curled from broken trees and the smell of fire hung heavy in the air. Birds had fled, leaving only silence. Daniel stood in the clearing, his chest heaving, the glowing pole in his hand. Max growled at his side, teeth bared. Behind them, the two alien girls stood close together, their small hands trembling with light. Across from them, the leader hunter stepped forward. It was taller than the others, its black armor lined with glowing red cracks like fire under stone. Its single red eye burned brighter than the sun. The forest seemed to shiver around it. The leader raised its weapon, a long blade of blue energy that hissed and crackled. Its voice boomed in its harsh alien tongue. The older girl whispered, "He says, this ends now." Daniel gripped the pole tighter. His arm shook, but not with fear, with determination. "Then let's finish it." The leader charged faster than Daniel expected. It swung its blade in a wide arc. Daniel ducked, rolling across the ground. Sparks flew as the blade sliced into a tree, splitting it in half. Max leapt at the hunter, biting at its arm. The machine roared, swatting him away. Max yelped, but quickly scrambled back to his feet, ready again. Daniel lunged forward, thrusting the glowing pole. The tip struck the hunter's chest, sending a burst of light. The armor cracked, but the creature didn't fall. Instead, it swung its blade down hard. Daniel barely blocked. The impact threw him backward. His arms burned, his grip nearly breaking. He hit the ground, gasping. The younger girl screamed. She ran forward, holding out her glowing hands. Energy shot from her palms, striking the hunter's side. The machine staggered, its red eye flickering. But the attack drained her. She fell to her knees, her glow fading. Daniel forced himself up. He could not let her sacrifice be wasted. He shouted, charging again. This time he didn't aim for the chest, he aimed for the joints. The glowing pole slammed into the hunter's knee. Sparks exploded. The giant stumbled. Max darted forward, biting at the weak spot, pulling with all his strength. The older girl lifted both her hands, her glow brighter than ever. She shouted words in her strange tongue, and Daniel felt energy rush into him again. His muscles burned with power, his vision sharp. He roared and struck once more. The pole smashed into the hunter's helmet. Cracks spread across the red eye. The leader howled, its voice shaking the trees. But it was not finished. It lifted its weapon high, glowing brighter than ever. If it struck, it would kill them all. Daniel's heart pounded. He knew he had only one chance. He looked at the girls. "Together!" he shouted. The girls grabbed his arms, their small hands glowing. Power surged into him, flooding the pole with blinding light. It hummed like thunder, shaking in his hands. The leader swung down. Daniel thrust upward. The two forces collided. The clearing exploded with light. The ground shook. Trees cracked. Birds screamed in the distance. For a moment, the world was nothing but white fire. When the light faded, Daniel lay on the ground, gasping for air. Smoke rose around him. His ears rang. He pushed himself up, searching. Max whined softly, limping but alive. The girls stood nearby, holding each other, their glow dim but steady, and the leader hunter was gone. Its armor lay broken, scattered across the ground like burned metal. Its red eye flickered once, then went dark forever. Silence returned to the forest. Daniel dropped the glowing pole. His hands trembled. His chest ached. But he was alive. They were alive. The older girl walked to him. She placed her glowing hand on his heart. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. Human. Strong. Human. Protector. The younger one added, her eyes bright with gratitude. You fight like no other. You fight for us. Daniel shook his head, breathing hard. I only did what anyone would do, but deep inside he knew that wasn't true. Not everyone would fight giants with nothing but sticks and courage. Not everyone would risk their life for strangers from the stars. Max barked once, tail wagging weakly. Daniel smiled, scratching his dog's ears. We did it, boy. We did it. The girls looked up at the sky. Their glow brightened again, no longer dim with fear but warm with hope. The older one said softly, We will remember. We will protect. One day, we return. Daniel frowned. Return? To where? She shook her head gently. Not now. Too dangerous. But someday, when humans are ready. The younger girl smiled at Max, patting his head. He saved us. You saved us. Earth is not weak. Daniel looked around at the broken forest, the smoke, the shattered armor of the hunters. He thought of how close they had come to losing everything. Yet here they were, still standing. He rose slowly, helping the girls to their feet. Come on, let's get out of here. The four of them walked together, Max leading the way. The forest was scarred but alive, sunlight breaking through the smoke. As they left the battlefield, Daniel felt a strange peace. He had stepped into something far beyond his world, something that had tested every part of him. And in the eyes of those alien children, he had proven what it meant to be human. A fighter. A protector. A survivor. The story was not over, it was only the beginning.